My name is Jacob Carter, and I am a British artist currently living and working in Birmingham. I create performances, sound atmospheres, handmade instruments, as well as facilitating participatory projects through workshops. I am interested in iterative ways of working, approaching research and making from an exploration of materiality. I get very inspired by discovering a new process or using a new piece of technology. It's that sense of exploring something new that excites me and makes me want to create work to find out ways I can apply this new method or see how far I can push a piece of technology. My recent project has explored how developing a community of artists can help construct contemporary and radical ways of performing sound within virtual spaces. These have included workshops such as the art of mimicry, where participants joined in an online workshop. In this, they used domestic objects and their own voices to create background noise in response to different online appropriated videos. This project is titled Participatory Sound Making and was made in collaboration with a group of staff and students from Birmingham School of Art. I was looking at how workshops could be used as a research methodology and how these can enable artists to work together to discuss themes and concepts. This also functioned as a method of skill building where participants learned ways of forming sound while understanding concepts of background noise and mimicry. These conversations then helped to produce work such as films, sound recordings, and drawings. The workshops were very informal, few were in person while others were facilitated online. While it was challenging in certain aspects, it also posed an interesting prospect for exploring virtual spaces and digital bodies. We were looking at how we could disrupt online spaces, with Microsoft Teams being this rather corporate space intended to portray information clearly and succinctly. However, with these workshops, we disrupted these ideas and its original purpose through acts such as rubbing the microphone and tapping the laptop screen. These workshops also influenced my own research and independent making, such as exploring the process of instrument making. Inspired by traditional African instruments, I began exploring contemporary ways of building instruments using non-traditional materials sourced in Birmingham. I enjoyed the process of learning and the trial and error of constructing something that is both a finely finished sculptural object as well as an instrument that produces in-tune music. This process developed into a documentary film to explore how the process of making can be seen as an art form in itself. The work remains unfinished, but my desire is that it can be situated as an installation that allows it to be played and activated by others, exploring the ideas of participatory ways of performing sound. My past projects have been heavily influenced by sound art and ways of utilizing obsolete technologies and pushing them beyond their material limits. I was very inspired by the works of early sound artists such as John Cage, as well as Christian Marclay's use of impromptu performances and the manipulation of vinyl records. I read quite widely into concepts of background noise and sound, specifically a book called Cracked Media by Caleb Kelly, which was very inspiring. It discussed the nature of a perceived crack within technology, with this point being where a technology or sound has been disrupted and how it allows the opportunity for new chance happenings to form. A large proportion of my early work was focused on manipulating technology, creating these chaotic, layered soundscapes. This really helped develop my interest in creating artwork as an exploration of materiality, actively avoiding contextual framing or having specific meanings within my work. It became much more of an experience, something peculiar and chaotic. Music has always been a key influence in my work. I enjoy the journey and development of a song and how it presents its own narratives and emotional responses. I think that passion for music is what drew me to creating sound art. I wanted to move away from art that was just static and add a layered element that could be more interactive. This interest developed almost into a collector's obsession after listening to sound works of G. Lucas Crane as well as Basinki's disintegration loops. I became obsessed with the cassette tape. I found that the material quality of it was interesting in how pliable it was and how easy it was to disrupt and creatively play with. This guided my work into becoming very performative, as I was more interested in the processes of sound making more than the actual sounds produced themselves. My performance audio collider was an example of this. I wanted to create a multi-sensory experience, exploring the concept of layering both through the music as well as the projected imagery and collage involved. This performance acted as a form of improvisation, attempting to find a rhythm and pattern within cracked media, disrupted vinyl records, detuned radios, and repetitive tape loops. My current project is engaged in identifying what constitutes a culturally significant object and how we can construct fictional histories. Through this, I've been experimenting with the aesthetic qualities of patterns and how these are read when displayed on different materials or situated in different contexts. I was influenced to explore this concept of patterns after making interactive text-based games. These games were created to explore a more contemporary and interactive way of presenting research while paying homage to retro 80s game aesthetics. These games are also used as a way to facilitate online workshops which required me to learn a variety of coding languages. Taking this concept, I focused on how this idea could be presented through patterns, symbols, and sequences. I was really inspired by reading The Language of Pattern by Keith Albarn. This was a publication from a group of artists who created the exhibition Pattern and Belief, which explored Islamic arts and patterns. Within this book, it describes how all of these complex patterns can be reduced to the simplest of forms and sequences. I'm not so much interested by the theoretical side of the publication as I am concentrated on the symbols and diagrams shown within. I have been influenced by the range of images and how they appear almost ritualistic or paganistic, and have been exploring ways of applying symbols onto different materials and placing them into different contexts. This has built up a body of work that appears as a kind of catalogue of strange artifacts. This is developing as an exploration of media archaeology. This concept looks at the relationship between media and the development of technology. It speaks to the notion that media is recurrent through history and that new media can revive previously neglected or lost forms of communication. I am concerned with the process of civilizing materials, creating my own mythical history and language. I take a material and transform it into a pattern and structure, allowing these objects to look like they have been handcrafted and placed within the environment with purpose. These strange collections of objects creates a fictional narrative and a sense of social cohesion, leaving the viewer intrigued as to what the purpose of the objects are. This has been influenced by prehistoric sites such as Stonehenge, with these stone monoliths creating their own sense of intrigue and a form of language of its own. After researching traditional hand processes of ancient cultures such as weaving, pottery, and stone carving, I have explored how these kinds of processes can be reimagined in a contemporary way. One of these methods has been through laser engraving, making a direct reference to Alban's The Language of Pattern. I have reproduced these symbols and engraved them into concrete casts. The objects attempt to confuse the viewer as they don't know if they are new objects made to look old or if they are historical found objects. The engraved line that is made with the laser is also interesting as it does not look natural. It is machine-made, a contemporary process, but it is replied to a material that makes it look old and of historical significance. These plaster casts that I have been producing is another way that I have referenced the idea of culturally significant objects. Take, for example, the historical sites such as Pompeii, where archaeological artifacts have been recorded in plaster. The very material of plaster has been informed by these contexts to allow the viewer to read them as a sort of replica or document of historical objects. However, the context is removed to mystify where these have come from and why they're here now. The idea of taking something rather mundane and preserving it in plaster allows it to be memorialized. The broken fragments could appear to be debris from a war zone or displaced objects from a lost civilization. Currently, I am teaching myself how to work with clay to produce pottery. This has been an interesting challenge due to the limitations of equipment I have. I have been exploring hand-making techniques such as slab building, as well as researching ways to make DIY fire pit kilns. The process of making pottery is my way of creating my own culturally significant objects, developing a fictional history of artifacts referencing those from ancient Rome. I'm also influenced by fiction writers such as Tolkien, as well as popular sci-fi media, whose fictional languages are developed to provide a history and culture to these made-up civilizations. Exploring how the technology of language is essential for an emerging civilization, I've included symbols scored into the clay to develop my own fictional language and allow these objects to appear like historical artifacts. Moving forwards, I'm looking at how I can push the boundaries of these symbols and apply them to different contexts. Due to the recent lockdown, they've been forced into more of a domestic setting. This has made this contradictory dialogue with these strange symbols looking very out of place in the familiar context of the home or the garden. It creates a theme of historical imagery being disrupted by the contemporary setting. It looks like it doesn't belong.